I love that this movie did, in what my opinion, the best Requels do. This was a prequel, sequel, reboot, but it did something where it extended the lore, respected the lore, and grew the lore out. So it allows you to get your closure, get your fan moments, but also grow forward in a way that doesn't feel like you're just looking back.
Welcome back to the break room. Is Alien Romulus one of the best films in the Xenomorph franchise? And will Weyland-Yutani ever discover that sweet, sweet blend of Xenomorph and human worker DNA and just get it right? We'll get into it.
It's a difficult recipe. It takes 11 herbs and spices.
It's a tough balance to get it right. I'm Brandon Barrick. Joining me today to talk about all the chest-bursting alien goodness, our new Rockstars' very own engineer, it's Erik Voss.
If only I could drink some black goo and just spill my DNA into the rest of you to give you life. I will come back thousands of years later to eliminate all of you, because that's what they did. They gave us Jesus.
Yeah.
And then they decided to kill us, and it didn't work.
I heard that same speech on the metro train this morning, Erik.
It was me.
Also, he just got his hours doubled, so he's going to be in those mines for a while. It's Coy Jandreau.
Just a blue-collar worker trying to survive while they giveth and they taketh away. Erik and I have never done a show together.
This is the first time Coy and I have been on screen together in the break room.
This is like the merging of the two alien timelines into one.
It really
I
is.
like that.
Combining the two.
Yep.
Hey,
You mean the prequel versus the later era, as opposed to the Predator era. We won't be talking about Predator here, because Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem are not.
They're silly.
Canon.
They're silly.
As good as Prey was, we're not there yet.
Silly.
But did you hear that quote where they said they want to do a Dan Trachtenberg direct half and Fede direct half and AVP sequel and make it
That is
like
wild.
a grindhouse?
I want that so bad.
I'll watch it.
Like, because they're friends. Dan and Fede are like homies, so like that would be, come on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Come on.
This is your spoiler warning. We're going to talk about the film Alien Romulus and probably all the other alien films out there. The ones that matter anyways. And heck, I'll talk about the Alien Dark Horse comics, because those were always great.
The new Marvel
and the
stuff's
Predator
pretty
ones.
solid, dude.
Is it good?
There's a Paul Reiser comic right now where it's Paul Reiser's character survives. It's a what if alien book.
It's his Mad About You character, right?
And it's him being like, why are these women not dating me? And also these aliens. No, but it's from the perspective of he got more power and like how he'd leverage the xenomorphs to get himself out of trouble. It's a really great book.
Okay.
Marvel right now.
Does he, this is showing my ignorance here, I forget, does he survive aliens?
No,
he
Burke dies.
That's
and
the what if element.
Okay, what if he survives?
Behind the hatch, and then there's a deleted scene from Aliens where Ripley, on her way to go rescue Newt, passes Burke, and she decides to. He's like,
he's glued up in the wall,
and she gives him like a grenade or drops a grenade at his feet, and you hear a boom, and you hear the residual echo of the boom in the theatrical cut. It's not even in James Cameron's director's cut, I believe. It's like a deleted scene.
Okay.
Interesting. Is it online?
Yeah, you can find it.
I want to see that.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Alien Romulus. What was everyone's general thoughts about the film? Did it meet your expectations? Beat them? How do you feel about it?
It beat my expectations. Like, Fede Alvarez is a good director, but, Don't Breathe was pretty great. His version of Evil Dead was pretty great. But, like, he has not arrived yet until this movie, which I believe he has arrived. It is difficult to make a quality Alien franchise film. We've seen a lot of people try.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. David Fincher had his swing at it, which wasn't his fault. He came in late to production for Alien 3 and actually made a pretty good movie, considering everything. We had two pretty bad Alien vs. Predator movies, and then Ridley Scott returned to the franchise with Prometheus and Alien Covenant and made two films that expanded the lore but left fans of the franchise a little disappointed. And what Fede Alvarez really did well in this film is recognize that this, at its core, at the heart of this franchise, is a horror story. Yeah. It's a claustrophobic haunted house story with creepy crawlies that should make us feel that kind of terror that we feel the moment we're about to go to bed and turn out the light and we see a spider crawl underneath the dresser. That fear is what the entire first Alien film that Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon wrote is all based on. And you need to be like an insect enthusiast to fully appreciate it. And one thing that, there's a lot of things that surprised me about this film. A, its connections to the prequels of Prometheus and Covenant. But B, how much they're willing to expand the biological anatomy of the species to introduce something that is a new stage of the xenomorph development between chestburster and adult warrior of a pupal stage, a chrysalis, which
the thing on the wall had some feminine mystique to it.
Which H.R. Giger loved vaginal imagery and erectile imagery and everything. But the fact that they did that, and that is something that could really piss off fans, but they just based it on biological science, and it made perfect sense and introduced a whole new way that you can die and a whole new creepy visual. And I just thought the movie is not a perfect film. I think the pacing gets a little rushed, especially in the second half. They made a really big swing with the offspring in the final act that we can talk about. But I think overall, I am so impressed by this film. I think it's really well done, and it was clearly made by not just Fede Alvarez, but a team of designers, set designers, and artists who just loved the original two films and made something that feels like it is worthy. I think it's the third best Alien film, after those two.
Spoiler alert, we are going to give our Alien film ranking, so stay tuned for the rest of that list. I think we'll see Alien Resurrection take the first spot. Coy, what were your general thoughts of Alien Romulus?
I was super impressed because, likewise, I really enjoyed Evil Dead. I really enjoyed Don't Breathe, but I didn't find them to be my genre. Like, I'm not generally as much of a horror guy, so I went into this like, oh, I'm not much of a horror guy, but I love Alien, which is a horror film. How will this work for me? And it would have been, in the hands of a lesser filmmaker, a great opportunity to just play the hits, to like come back. And I love that this movie played the hits and then expanded upon them. I love that this movie did, in what my opinion, the best Requels do. This was a prequel, sequel, reboot, but it did something where it extended the lore, respected the lore, and grew the lore out. So it allows you to get your closure, get your fan moments, but also grow forward in a way that doesn't feel like you're just looking back. And I think that Creed does that so well, because Creed, I think, is the ultimate in this new era of kind of meta, but not as meta as it is self-aware. And there's a big difference, and I think that this film is self-aware while also launching forward. So this is Creed, to me, of sci-fi, because it opens horror, it transcends action in its second act by being more than just action, like Aliens does. It reflects on some of the nihilism of Alien 3, it has some of the humor of Alien Resurrection, and then it acknowledges the prequels in a really unique way. So it looks at the franchise, plays the hits, and then has this incredible fourth act that launches into something new, but it plants enough seeds it doesn't feel out of left field to do that new thing. So to me, this is what I want out of something that's a legacy, because if you do a legacy sequel and it just feels like you're rehashing, it doesn't work. If you do a legacy sequel that's brand new, it doesn't feel like it's legacy. So you gotta be Top Gun, you gotta be Creed, you gotta be something that balances this line. And I think Fede Alvarez, with his history and with his reverence, plus this practical set that included a 7-foot NBA All-Star. Like there was a dude that played that terrifying offspring, like Robert Bobrovsky is like a Russian last name. Yeah. That's a man. That's insane that they blended those practical elements that I don't think anyone else would have been brave enough to attempt this beloved franchise. So playing the hits plus new songs, I love this band.
Yeah.
What did you think, Brandon?
I really enjoyed it too. I don't like scary movies. I've never seen any of Fede Alvarez's other work. I thought like the trailer for this movie was frightening and very scary. And so I went into it with a lot of fear because it did feel more like the original Alien movie than like some of the more modern sequels that felt like more actiony or space explosion-y. But I was really surprised with how much lore they expanded on. You know, the kind of surprise of Rook was fun. Maybe overused, I don't know. But performances were great. I love like how tactile everything felt. Hard to tell what was a puppet, what was CG in some parts. I love the feel of the ships, like how dirty everything was, the buttons, the old computer terminals, like all that was like really great. Sometimes the facehuggers, sometimes it felt like a puppet being pulled by a string, and I don't know if that was intentional. Like Evan and I were kind of talking about that, like with the new Star Wars series on like Disney Plus, how they will purposely have very puppet-looking aliens, where they want to take on that look because that's what we associate with Star Wars, that very practical thing from the 70s. So some of this movie felt like that too, where it's like they're trying to maybe make it look like a puppet when it's not. I don't know. But very cool. And I also I liked that where you talked about the new stage they kind of showed. Because even when I was explaining to my wife before the movie, like the life stage of an alien, I was like, it comes out of the chest and then it gets bigger somehow. I don't know. But like, I love it showed like the skin, like it's shedding its skin and then like it goes into the wall and it makes the little thing. I love that he tries to kill it and it gets him back, which
Yeah.
I thought was just very funny. Like, hey, don't mess with me. I'm doing something here. Get out of here, dude. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Very fun, and like a lot of moments that felt like a video game almost, especially when she's like shooting with the auto cannon, which was fun.
The level literally felt like a video game. The part where they had the skin temperature and like that whole sequence felt like such a great game.
That almost felt like Predator a little bit, right? Where it was like
isn't there a scene in Tremors too where they get they spray themselves with a fire extinguisher to get cold? It's like this shit's cold. And the Tremors are heat-seeking things. These
when
are
they
the
could
bipedal
walk,
ones.
they could walk. They had little things on it. When's the Tremors Xenomorph crossover? That's what we need, right?
We need a requel.
The Graboids versus the Xenomorphs.
They just gotta bring Bacon back. I'll watch it.
I think there's like 20 of those Tremors.
Oh, there's so many Tremors.
They go deep.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like a movie that was steeped in the tone and the atmosphere and the claustrophobia of the 1979 Alien, where it was about like the biological life cycle, the idea of these being blue-collar workers who are being oppressed and abused by their company, and they're all indentured servants that are just at the mercy of this AI mother. And God, does that feel more relevant now than ever?
I mean, that first 5 minutes of the movie when she's just on the planet, I was like, this is so depressing. Yeah. And I'm so depressed. And like, they're purposely like, hey, there's no sun here. You never see any daylight. It's like, oh, and then she's just lying and seeing the computer just tick up and like double her hours. I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
And it was effective.
I know. I was like, get me out of here.
Get out. Yeah, and do whatever you have to.
Yeah.
So that sense of desperation, the sweat on these characters, the fact that they were so young too, you really just feel for all of them. But the movie is also like the team understands how fun the tech of Aliens was that James Cameron introduced and Sid Mead introduced, of like how much fun the gadgetry can be, the Colonial Marines, and how these characters like. I really thought we were going to get a reveal that Tyler at one point went to like a boot camp to be a Colonial Marine, but they never revealed. He's just like video games and magazines. Like he's a guy who plays Call of Duty and like wishes he could leave, but he's stuck in this blue collar job as a miner. And like the fact that like the movie had this self-aware sense of fun, and just those shots of Kaylee Spinney just like unloading on the xenomorphs just to spray their acid everywhere. And they included some shots of her like, which is like they had Sigourney Weaver do, of just think of if you became the gun, if you became the pulse rifle, the look of insanity in your eyes. You're like, I have to exterminate them all. Activate your inner Colonel Kurtz in this moment. And the way Sigourney did that so well, Kaylee Spinney just clearly studied that and channeled that. And so like the movie just hit those notes, played the hits of like Aliens in a really effective way, just to make it fun.
Just to have like, in this hallway we're gonna have like 20 of them come in.
And I thought that was such a great way to build stakes, but also like it felt valid. I was so worried that this film, once you press the gas into the stratosphere, it literally doesn't let off. And I was like, how can this keep going? And there were a few moments where I'm like, I'm exhausted, I'm broken, okay, what's next? And I was really worried that however it ended wouldn't feel like it was bigger than the last 20 minutes, or that it would feel like, oh, what is this left turn? And I think a lesser film, I would have felt that way about the last 20 minutes, because I've seen pre-designed stuff, pre-viz stuff for Jurassic Park where they're like, what if we have dinosaur-human hybrids? And I'm like, and like that's been a thing they've been trying to do forever. On paper, this does not work for me. In delivery, I was like, I'm so exhausted, so broken, and this is so traumatizing. It tricked me into being like, I accept this weird choice. And it also ties into Prometheus. It also ties into Alien Covenant. So I think any other filmmaker, if they hadn't physically, mentally, and emotionally broken me for an hour and a half, I wouldn't have loved the ending. But since it landed and it had a precedent in other films, it got to take that swing. So that left turn, I think, doesn't work 9 times out of 10. This is that 1 out of 10, and I loved it.
Yeah. Really fun stuff. Let's talk about some of like the kind of bigger questions or like thoughts and connections that tie this movie to the rest of this kind of bigger franchise, right? Of course, ignoring Alien vs. Predator. Who cares? Who cares about those, right? So they work hard to kind of like bring together the two big lores as I see it. The kind of like, you know, the Alien and Beyond, and then the prequel stuff, right? The idea of this black ooze virus that the engineers created to destroy all life, and the fact that Weyland Yutani has always been trying to take alien DNA and merge it with you to make the perfect worker, which is just like so depressing and sad. Do you think this movie did a good job of kind of marrying those two halves of the franchise and making this through line?
I think it did as good as good of a job as it could have done. There are some major implications of all this. First of all, we had Prometheus introduce the idea of this compound, the black goo, as it's been called, the creation of bioweapon created by the engineers, and they used this to create life, but it's also something that can be used to like disintegrate life. David in Alien Covenant weaponized it against the alien city, and in Alien Covenant, didn't it seem like we're now going on this timeline where the company of Weyland-Yutani never learned what this black goo was? It seemed like it was in their hands briefly in Prometheus, but then as of Covenant, it was now in David's hands.
Yeah, I guess that's what I don't know either. Is like, is this Weyland-Yutani making the decisions? Is it the mother AI is making the decisions and the company doesn't know? Are those two things the same? Is Mother Weyland, right? And just kind of running the company to keep the humans busy.
I think that's why they didn't use, and I've seen this note a lot, and I think that it would have been a different story. It would have been interesting, but I think that's why they didn't use David as the Rook role. I think that would have been...
It would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Because they could have gotten Fassbender, right?
I assume, but I think that's why the question wasn't asked as directly. Because now we're asking it from lore, but if he was the alien, I mean, if he was the synth, we would have been like, wait a second, like that. I think that would have been a bigger red flag.
It's not here to help.
I assume they're okay, like you said, it's enough. Like it works enough that it's a connecting through line. Because it definitely is like, the train tracks almost don't connect, so it's like, oh, there's a car's turn. Yeah. So I think it works, but I definitely think there's a spot for a third prequel.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And that I'd be intrigued by. Now that this is so good, I don't have that, like, do I want another alien? No, I want another alien.
I think they'll make another one. And I like this movie where it's like, the main story is our heroes and their own journey. But it's like, yeah, we'll give you a little bit of the bigger lore that's going on to kind of help the story along. Yeah. But it's not them trying to stop Weyland or them trying to stop this thing.
A good background villain here. Yeah. Obviously through Rook it was front and center, but Weyland wasn't as prevalent as like in the first film. Like and I liked that. Like there's that great scene where David is Andy in the movie is like possessed, and instead of it being like a demonic possession, it's possessed by the corporation. And I love.
Oh yeah, he's like being rebooted.
Yeah, they use like demonic imagery though. I love that like they
the red light, his hands,
or just like the eyes rolling back. It's literally demonic, but then as his eyes roll back, it's the corporations. Right. And I really like that the demon of capitalism is very reflection of the first film, and I love that it's a commentary so directly on like, no one cares about you as an employee. And even this synth is taken over in such a direct way. So I thought that did a really good job making Weyland kind of a Palpatine presence without somehow he returned.
Yeah, who do you think in the corporate structure when they were building the Romulus space station, they were like, which art should we put on the wall here? And someone was like, what about the destruction of Rome? Huh? Or like a baby is sucking on its dead mother's teeth.
Yeah, that's something we go into in the breakdown. It's like it's a plague in the city of Marseille in 1720. But they talk about the creation of Rome with Romulus and Remus, in which one of those brothers gets like killed. Like one of the brothers doesn't make it, and then they show this plague, which I think was supposed to be to remind them on their way into work, like, aren't human beings frail? And isn't it sad when babies will crawl into a pile of plague-ridden corpses and try to breastfeed? Like, God, what a depressing thing to look at.
I know, every day in space, you're just like, another day, another dollar, another face hugger on my coworker.
Yeah, above every urinal in the bathroom is just a plague doctor from medieval times with a creepy bird mask.
Checking in.
Yeah. Hey, what should we put on this door? How about a golden bronze statue of two babies sucking at a wolf's teat, huh? Yeah. Right on the door as we go into the office.
I have to wonder, because we'll talk about like the ethics of recreating Ian Holm's likeness in a bit, I assume, but you know, I was trying to what else this, like, you know, having Ian Holm as not Ash, but like this Rook that has the same likeness of Ash, same voice. Like, is there another version? Would you get Lance Hendrickson as like another version of Bishop? Would you have Guy Pearce as like a digital form of a Weyland on screen? Would you just have the voice of Mother explain this? And I think the tactile quality of having this half android with all the innards and the milk substances on his face, I think is a pretty effective dramatic device. And the fact that they could double use that as like the origin of the disc.
I did like that.
I think they needed a physical. I just don't know if I don't personally love the choice to make him the physical. But I know his family have signed off, and we're not discounting any of that. It's just the acknowledgement that he didn't say. Like, and my thing is it's always going to be a little ghoulish to use a body. Yeah. It's always going to feel like grave robbing if we put an actor. And it's not just that the technology is not there. It was disconcerting as someone who loves that film and the Lord of the Rings films, and Ian Holm's in literally his IMDb is stacked. You know this man. So seeing his face not correct, and that was more disconcerting because of how familiar we are with him. So that was an odd thing for me. That was a little distracting. I would have preferred a narrative where David worked, or any of those examples, except the voice I don't think would have landed because of the horror elements. I agree physically, but I don't know if Ian Holm felt right.
Yeah. Couldn't it have been any actor? You could bring in anyone to just play an android who, like any kind of surprise casting.
An animatronic of him.
Yeah.
It's an animatronic.
You could have destroyed the face more.
It's a role that is the best possible scenario.
That's why I feel there's some dishonesty, because Fede Alvarez says that, we just created an animatronic, but we're watching it and there was clearly visual effects and CGI that went in, that layered on top of it. And like every director, just be transparent. Like Christopher Nolan said, we did it all practical, the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb testing at Trinity, but we did some VFX too. Well, tell us! Just say that you use VFX. Like, we don't have to be afraid of it.
You're not a bad boy.
But in this case, that's why I think
you're in trouble.
It was. I agree with you. I think getting the family's sign off and their blessing is not enough. Like, you need to have the actor during their lifetime put it in writing, telling the movie studio, I am okay with you using my likeness for this number of sequels or for this theoretical thing. I think they're like, oh, well, it's just one generation removed, so we talked to. But what if it was the case like of George Reeve in The Flash, where he has no living descendants? Like, who do you ask to get his approval to resurrect
whatever lawyer got the right, like whatever person bought the estate, which is not pleasant.
It's bullshit. And then let's talk about 3 decades from now, and they have some shitty great-grandson and great-granddaughter
that never met them,
who never knew them, and it's just like some asshole who's like, I own the estate to my grandpappy's,
and I'm living off that the rest of my life because he was an actor before I was conceived.
And so that's why I just feel gross about this. Like, just don't do it. Just like hire a new actor to play them if you want to do that.
I love that the film was so practical that there were those string moments. Like, I think you could have built an animatronic that felt intentionally stilted and leveraged that into the horror of it being like a broken thing. Yeah. But I do think that this generation, like our current wave of actors, we are going to start to see that being signed off on, like, legally. Yeah. I almost guarantee Harrison Ford's like, I want my great-great-grandkids to have money, so I'm going to play the Red Hulk past. Like, that Red Hulk scan, I think, is a while. Yeah. Like, I don't think he wants to show up on set. I think dude just wants to be like, I'm the Red Hulk now. Yeah. And all the power to him because he did it.
Yeah, future actors, that will be like, you will be portraying Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like someone's very excited.
We're going to use your body to put Harrison Ford's skin on. Let's thank one of our sponsors today, Mando, which honestly we're stoked about. Between all of us here at the Break Room, we've had a few trips this summer, and packing toiletries is always an issue. I have so many toiletries, and I can't fit them all in my limited space. I got to get it in there. Well, I definitely got to have Mando because Mando has got you covered. Mando's 4-in-1 is a 5-ounce bar that does the work of a shampoo, face wash, and body wash, and deodorant. It's clinically proven and formulated with a gentle alpha hydroxy acid that stops the odor at the source. If you watched our D23 video, hey, thank you so much. Go hit that like button if you didn't already. And you'll also remember Berg had a personal experience with Mando. He got stuck in the Phoenix International Airport during the big IT outage of 2024, and he was the only person who didn't smell like an everything bagel that had been left out in the sun. Berg owes Mando his life and the lives of all the people who smelled his beautiful body that were standing near him. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and it has free shipping. Luckily, we have a discount code to help you get hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code BREAKROOM at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Yeah, Evan?
I did want to say, we were talking, you guys mentioned prequels earlier. There is an upcoming Alien TV show called Alien Earth. That will be a prequel to the first Alien film. It will be set 3 decades before that film. So just 30 years, not a big one. But it'll be interesting to see what part of the world they explore there.
Is that 20... 90?
So
that's around the Prometheus time?
The first Alien was 21, 22. So really, we're talking about 1 year before the expedition in Prometheus, because the expedition in Prometheus left, I believe, in 2091 and arrived on LV-226 or whatever that other planet was in 2093. And it's a 2-year expedition. So it's going to be around the time Shaw and Holloway were pitching to the Wayland Company this whole star chart. But yeah, I don't know. I just know Noah Hawley's making it, and I'm going to watch every episode of it because it's Noah Hawley.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really curious about that one to see how it connects to everything. But it's going to be pretty removed from Romulus. But I hope Noah Hawley's series answers the question how the space jockey got there on Acheron.
That does feel like the biggest question next to the Black Goo versus. I feel like those are the two big prequel questions. Also, it's alarming that 2090 is 65 years away and some of us might live to it.
Yeah, some of us.
We could possibly make it to
We
the
drink a lot of water.
Guys, hydrate, be healthy, exercise. You too can see xenomorphs.
I told you, I'm getting chest bursted as soon as I can. If the alien future comes to be our present.
As much as I love Ridley Scott, the fact that neither Prometheus nor Covenant answered the question of the space jockey, I think, I'll watch every Ridley Scott movie because he's one of the greatest directors of our lifetimes. But, for people to say that Alien Romulus betrays what Ridley Scott was doing with Prometheus and Covenant, I say great, good. Let's get back to formula.
Back to formula?
Yeah, I think we've been missing the creepy crawly element of it, the claustrophobia of it, and they did enough lore, but can we just talk about the lore for a second? The black goo they extracted from the xenomorph from the Nostromo. He was able to re-engineer it from his DNA. That's some advanced technology that you could re-engineer the building blocks of the DNA back to the exact compound that the engineers
Well, we don't know if it was the same, because this is what I was thinking too. Because like you said, there's the black goo that the engineer drinks billions of years ago to seed life on Earth. Then there's the black goo they were creating to be a virus to kill everything. So, but we don't know if the black goo that Rook was able to make that gets injected into Mama, right? If that was the virus that kills, the virus that creates life.
You know if it was pure, how
just
well it broke down.
it might have, because it seemed like that didn't kill her, right? It bonded with her the child inside of her, and grew it into something.
It accelerated growth, so it accelerated the growth.
It blended with the DNA, resurrection style, made a horrific Mark Zuckerberg-esque tall creature.
7-foot Zuck.
With a real hole on the front. Check out that cloaca on the front. That was odd.
Yep.
But my assumption from that is that they were trying to suggest that black goo was the same stuff. They even had the 3D map of the C-type ampule vase.
With the droplets and stuff.
It definitely felt suggested. I'm just inferring that it wasn't as successful.
I
definitely think that was the goal.
Wasn't pure.
But it's like orange juice from concentrate. I don't believe you.
So
I assume he wouldn't have had the same technology as the
That was
engineer.
instant mashed potatoes. That was our baby.
Yeah, 100%.
That baby was instant
mashed
potatoes.
So I guess my question for the two of you is, do we think that, or why do we think that when Holloway was given the stuff in Prometheus, he impregnated Shaw, she had an advanced pregnancy that she was supposed to be infertile, but she got this pregnancy and it was just this squid thing that grew rapidly. Why did she produce that versus Kay in this movie, when she gave it to herself when she was already pregnant, produced the offspring?
My assumption is that with the lack of already formed fetus, it accelerated the fetus, so it was a blend, because she was 2-3 months pregnant. She was pregnant enough to know she was pregnant. Versus someone who was infertile doesn't have the fetus at that stage of being injected, so there's nothing to grow from, so it creates fully, because we know it can create life. So my interpretation was creating life versus blending with life, and that's also kind of my implication of it wasn't as perfect, because that caused it to need to bond to something to create something anew.
Plus Rook was purposely trying to make that hybrid, right?
Right.
We saw the examples in the Frozen and stuff like that. So he'd been kind of engineering with that stuff, whereas David was like, I found some of this.
I got this stuff.
I'm just gonna do a little experiment here on the ship while I'm.
And Rook kept stressing about live forever, rapid growth, healing. That felt very different than David's perfection. Those things felt like different black goos.
Yeah.
I think the implication at the end of Covenant is that David might have been the one who created the xenomorph that attacked the crew of the Nostromo.
Sure.
Ridley Scott never firmly connected that because we still
Like
don't know
David maybe put the eggs around.
Yeah, that David might have put
jockey.
the eggs around the space jockey and just as like a nesting spot.
Started the signal to send it back.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
draw
Ridley
in a
implied
ship.
that David was like engineering, for lack of a better term,
Ah.
the situation.
Yeah.
And that he was trying to carry on the legacy of what the engineers were trying to do, but they never connected that. Do you want them to make that connection in a future film, or is that something you want to be left a mystery?
This sequel could be a sequel to this, right? Could be fun, where like her ship gets off track and like winds up at wherever David wound up, and he's created this, this empire for himself.
I wouldn't mind a Days of Future Past, like
Another Fassbender
right?
project,
Like Fassbender blends with in this case Ian McKellen of the Xenomorphs. But I'd like to see like the figure 8 come together because we do have these 2 different parallel timelines. It feels like.
I don't know if I need another Fassbender film, and it might just be the taste that Covenant left in my mouth. I thought Covenant was an effective film, but I just did not like that they killed off Shaw the way they did in Covenant. That was
kind of like
really
off screen
disappointed by that.
in the past, right? Like they discover her body.
Yeah, there was also just some pacing issues with Alien Covenant that I just couldn't stomach. But I think like at a certain, I love Michael Fassbender, but like this franchise fell in love with Michael Fassbender.
It got stuck on him too much.
It became Fassbender versus Fassbender at one point. And then they did a Parent Trap, and I was like,
man, that flute scene.
I just couldn't get down with it. And I liked Mimi Rapace so much in Prometheus, so the fact that they did her dirty that much in Covenant off screen too, just felt
that's
lame.
fair.
So I don't know if I need another Fassbender film to.
The closure, I think, would be interesting with someone like Fede Alvarez who loves it. I think you'd want a filmmaker that loves this as much as he clearly does in order to complete that story. Because like you were just saying, with Ridley Scott, I don't need someone that's so beholden to it that they're going in a different direction that we don't connect with as well. And all the people that love those films, it's not to say we're right or wrong, it's just our experience of it. My experience of it isn't, I don't follow Covenant and Prometheus as deeply. So I would love to find a gateway into those. I would love a third film to have me go like, now I can see what these people that love it love. And I think that the only way to do that would be another Fassbender connecting thing. And I'd love to see someone like Fede, who's so good at connecting all these tones, make that kind of work and answer these questions.
Yeah. Did Ridley Scott swing so hard with the design of the engineers that they have to be huge, that they have to have this weird they're bald, they're black eyes, and they're like like, does that make it impossible? Because you could imagine if this were in the Star Wars universe, we would get Dave Filoni making an animated series following one of these engineers, and we would fall in love with this engineer, and he'd be like our favorite character.
He's an engineer that goes to a planet. He's like, I don't want to destroy this one. These guys are pretty nice.
Or he steals all of the bioweapons that he can find and like makes a sacrifice. You can imagine like some other fun story to explain how the space jockey got there.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if we'll see a satisfying version of that in live action ever.
I think they need to be as oppressive as they are, and I think that does eliminate a decent amount of types of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because there's such an inversion of the Xenomorphs. Like, the Xenomorphs look so alien because they're so different, whereas they look so alien because they're so similar. And I love that, like, the little black and white of the two types of characters, I would love to have more data about them, but not too much, because I like that they're familiar but uncanny valley versus aliens are just terrifying. Like, Xenomorphs are just everything that goes bump in the night. So I'd love to connect them, because I don't know what that story would be, and that's kind of more exciting than just something else like this.
Yeah. I just really thought when we heard Prometheus, I remember that first trailer for Prometheus and how fucking excited I was.
Yeah.
That was such a good trailer. And I was like, we're going to learn how the space jockey got there. And then Prometheus didn't answer the question. And then Covenant came out. I'm like, we're going to learn how the space jockey got there.
Learned about all the space jockey's friends, and never about the space jockey.
Why's your last name Solo? Han? That's what I'm afraid of. If we find out space jockeys are like, ran out of gas.
Hey, you look like some sort of jockey flying a horse through space. Huh? Anything else we can discuss with like Ian Holm and Rook of it all? Do you
I think we needed some kind of source of authority. I think is probably what Alvarez was thinking. You need to have
someone to explain what's going on.
Yeah, and if Sigourney's not on board, and we've already brought back Sigourney.
I don't want Sigourney anymore in this.
Yeah,
franchise.
we can part ways with her, and you don't want to make it Fassbender because that's like it draws too many questions. Like I don't think they wanted to imply that it was Fassbender from Covenant who brought all this stuff to the Romulus, or that he was involved in any way, because he's on his own journey. I think he wanted to go. Alvarez wanted to go back to the original Alien as much as he could, and that's what informed the Ian Holm decision. I like the decision. I thought they got as much out of him as they could, and he was like a really villainous, effective character. The only thing, I think my biggest gripe about this movie is the way that it really just starts playing the hits a little too exactly in the final act. I think you can get one of those. When Andy goes, "Get away from her, you bitch." I'm like, okay,
With
you
the
get
pause?
one.
Yeah.
You get one, and he nailed it
Yeah,
in his
yeah.
delivery. I did not like how they had Ian Holmes say, "You have the line that we had Evan say, like, I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies." Like,
Yeah,
I
one
thought
magic
it was
bean
just-
is the rule, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think the
you
one
get
magic
one.
bean is dialogue in this movie, and they used two.
Yeah.
And they put him on every screen at one point where he's talking to Kay.
everybody.
He's like, "You need to take off. I'll take you back to Jackson Station." Like, all this shit.
They cut to him at one point, and there was like a little camera in front of him. And it just made me be like, oh, he had to be like, I gotta set up this camera. Like, and be on the screen. So I'm is that a good?
Hit a Zoom
I need
call.
more
It's like, make
light.
sure your
I
microphone.
need
Are you
more
facing
light.
a window?
Is this microphone working? Scratching the microphone. Is that one coming in? I got the wrong settings.
I wish he was alive for one scene, like one 90-second scene, and then when they went into the Romulus lab later, if it could have been the voice of Mother that explains all this, or just you already established the detail that Andy has all the programming.
Yeah.
So why couldn't Andy
Why couldn't
just
he
explain
know
all
it?
this? Like,
well,
why do you have
they
to have
had
him
that
on
line of
screen?
like, oh, I still have the same knowledge. I'm just better now. And I
Well,
was
they
like,
tag
okay,
team
that's
explained it. They kind of made it like
Yeah,
two
yeah.
people explaining it in the scene, and maybe that would have been too much exposition for
Yeah.
one character to say. But I think then
It
just
might have
show
held
the
too long. We
exposition.
were like, he's still telling us what's going on.
Yeah.
I think the dialogue did work, but I would have even liked two of the guy, like David. What's David's last name? The actor. Is it
Johnson.
David Johnson. I would have even liked if it was just he's a synth. There could have been two of them. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, that would have
sure.
even, but like I don't know. Something about the Ian Holm of it is my biggest asterisk.
Yeah, so I started to get a little tired of that. They just, as you said, they overused him.
Yeah.
I think you can have him for one scene, and I think the fact they had him in so much. But don't you think it was interesting that like she shuts off Mother, and then the band, the belts of the planet start chewing up the Romulus station, and we see him. He's like, oh shit, as like the ice is coming up,
Right.
but we don't see his body disintegrate. Do you think that was out of respect to Ian Holm, or do you think they want to establish, hey, this entity could exist somewhere?
No, I took it to be like that character's gone.
Yeah,
They
just
just
they're all
didn't
gone.
wanna-
But in comics, if you don't see him go,
Yeah.
That's
I
right,
know.
because you see the offspring, and these fuckers can survive in space.
yeah.
Man, the
He
Offspring
goes
jump
down
scare.
into the belt too, and then in the background you see the still in process of crashing
Right.
Romulus Remus modules, and like they're going right into each other, and it's kind of like, seems like a river now that has two big
Yeah.
sources of threats. Then one part of the river is flowing into the next part of the river, and I'm just like, doesn't that kind of remind you, visually at least, of the original engineer drinking the goo and just flowing into a river? And where does the river flow? And it kind of just reminded me of like, oh, the threat is still there in
Like
space.
it'll be in the rings. And
Yeah,
something
it's gonna come
'cause
back
it's ice
around.
rings,
Like
with
in
all the
Gravity,
ice.
it'll
Yeah,
swing
yeah.
back around.
I also love the visuals of the. Sorry to interrupt. The,
No, it's
the
okay.
space stuff I thought was really unique to how beautiful space was juxtaposed with the planet, and like that feeling of claustrophobia and trapped. I miss that like take your breath away in space feeling from movies of this
When they
era.
first come up,
oh,
and
man.
she's like, "Is that?" And he's
And then
like,
you
"Yeah,
see the
that's the
rings
sun."
and everything.
And he
It
was like,
took my breath
"Whoa,
away
that's
in such
good."
a real way. I was like,
Yeah,
"That's
yeah.
the sun." I'm like, I'm in Los Angeles /
Yeah, yeah.
Canada. I can look up and see the sun. But I was like, "Oh, the sun!" Like it was so effective to be excited by the
Oh,
sun.
when she said, "My baby will see the sun," I was like, "My baby ain't seen the
I
sun."
mean, but it was really cool to
Baby's
see
getting thrown
space.
into the rings. The planet. That's what's happening.
Seeing space is beautiful. It was really
Yeah.
effective in this film with how dark it was.
So, was that space station? Okay, that space station was always orbiting that planet, right? It had always been up there. That's where they were doing the work.
I don't know if it had always been orbiting the planet,
Or it
because
somehow,
I think they would
or
have
they
known
said
more
it got
about
caught in the planet's orbit.
I think it was like drifting and
Yeah.
it just got caught in the orbit.
Okay, so and then
Something they did
in
caused
theory,
it to-
it wasn't gonna crash into that planet. It was just gonna orbit it.
I think
so
it was going to
Wayland
crash
was
up
just
to the rings eventually, but
Okay.
something they did accelerated it.
and Wayland was just gonna leave it up there.
Because remember, they had to get it within like 36 hours.
36 hours,
And then all of
right.
a sudden it was like, we have 5 minutes.
Because in
they're like,
my mind, I was like, "Isn't this gonna like crash into the planet and
Well,
create
I think
a
that
huge
was
problem?"
or a huge opportunity, because I think that was part of like the mother's source code. Is like
They were
find
gonna
the
just
nearest,
wipe out everyone on the planet.
Yeah, find the nearest Wayland colony of expendable blue collar workers
Gotcha.
and just stick in that orbit and let it naturally crash down to the surface. And any debris that lands there, we can come back and scavenge later
Yeah,
and profit.
get the
from.
data.
I hope that bee working in the office who doubled her hours
know.
gets smashed.
Now, do you think she did that on a whim, or was she instructed by
No,
like, a
I
guidebook?
think it had the little flag that like, "Hey, you can double this person," and she's like, "You know, I get an extra ration."
She gets a
bar."
bonus.
Yeah, yeah.
She gets 2
Because she
days
did
off.
because it wasn't automatically done. She had to be like, Click.
Yeah.
Ooh, I hate her. I hate
think
her
it
so
had to do
much.
with the parents. Like the fact that her parents deceased were listed on her form. Like the parents might have had some leftover hours on their contract, and she's like, "Ooh," but I think you're right. She gets a bonus by doubling the hours.
She's in the
Little
break
does she
room.
know
She's in the
gonna
break
get her
room
stuff doubled
later.
too.
Stuffing her face, and she's like, "Yeah, you should have seen this bitch who walked up. I doubled her hours.
Little
She ain't going
orphan doesn't
anywhere."
get out of here.
Do you guys watch the Hollow operas? I think they're pretty good. Okay, before we get to our alien rankings, Evan, do we have any questions from the chat we should go to? Any thoughts?
We have some questions from the Twitch chat. Ryan Painter asking, my question is Kaylee Spaney. I'd love to know, as someone
Big
who's
year.
in the movie, I'd love to know, how was the performances of this young cast overall? Ryan Painter and I are big Kaylee Spaney fans, but also, I mean, it's a relatively younger and newer
Yeah,
cast.
Isabella Merced, isn't it? From Madame Web?
Yeah.
And she's going to be in
Girl.
Superman.
Hot girl.
Chicago, yeah. Kaylee Spaney had a big year. Civil War. Yeah, I thought everyone was really good in this movie. She was great. She has a tough time. I think that role is really tough to be the I don't know what's going on, but I also have to be kind of carrying this movie. Andy, the actor who plays Andy, David Johnson, is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, has to play two totally
2,000
different
Twitter
characters.
followers. That guy's
I mean, everyone for this movie should blow up.
Yeah, he's going to blow up. You're going to see him in everything
I'm
now.
so excited
This
for
Ian
him.
Holm
He's gonna
guy's
go
pretty
from
incredible.
responding-
Put him in a couple movies, I think. Just kidding.
Literally, he has
RIP.
time to respond because he's he's gonna go from the guy that has time to actually thank people because he has been. He's a sweetheart. To oh my god, I'm a world famous actor.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see that for him.
I mean, I love movies like this and Blade Runner 2049 where they're hey, we're going to tell you 1,000 times that this isn't a real person, but do you have feelings for them? And would you be sad if they died? And I love being questioned with that because it's man, I fucking fall for it every time.
Yeah.
I blame Pixar. They've made me love inanimate objects. And I don't ever want to see them die or suffer. I don't care that they don't feel pain.
Yeah, the way he was able to walk that line, and he played a character that was autistic coded, right? Let's be real.
Yeah, I think so.
But he didn't do it in a way that felt like parody, or he really felt like he understood the soul and the heart of this character, and that jokes were his language. And it was just this sweet way that he was programmed to do this, but that's just the only way he can connect is through humor. And what a wonderful contrast that is to what Joaquin Phoenix is doing with Joker,
Right.
with Arthur Fleck, and that it just feels like parody. I know he won an Oscar, and you could say, why am I dragging him into this? I just feel like so many people elevate what Joaquin Phoenix did as Joker as this is how you do someone who is struggling with their mental health, and they have to speak through jokes and through laughter, and that almost just feels so overwhelming and unavoidably thick. Whereas this just feels subtle in just the right way and heartbreaking, and you root for this character so much when he's told that he's going to get left behind, and who knows, he'll live forever just as the lonely,
I always think of
dog in
AI
Futurama.
of sitting down at the bottom of the ocean and AI just
God,
staring at
yeah.
Blue Fairy woof, woof.
I also think his performance is an absolute highlight, and I think it's really beautiful that everyone around him, their meanness and their talent at being cruel made us love him more. The way he was written, I really liked all those scenes of but Daddy, I love him. There was just such a an endearing quality of the character. And then Kaylee Spaney, we talk about her a year, but Priscilla, she's so strong in such a different way than she is in Civil War, and then she's so strong in a different way than she is here. And that's such a difficult line to walk, to not only be strong in such a specific way in different films, but to be earnest in different ways, because you have to see the cracks in the armor in all three different films in three different ways. So I was blown away by her here, and I think that Isabella Merced, I'm so excited she's Hawk Girl. Dora the Explorer she killed. The range on that girl. She was Dora not long ago.
Yeah.
So this
Poor
cast.
Dora.
And I like that they went young. I like that they went because if it was blue collar workers like some people wanted, it would have felt like too much of a rehash of the first one. And that's kind of my opening spiel about the film. I like that they remixed certain things, but they kept certain things. And I think having them young not only showed the horrors of Weyland-Yutani, that she was that young and getting out. How long has she been working? Was she 10?
Right.
What a dark timeline if you're 20 something and you've paid off your. That's terrifying. So I love that they were young.
12,000 hours or something like that.
And how desperate you are at that age.
Yeah.
So I liked the youth choice, and I thought they were all worthy.
Question from Assassin Peach 77. Since Rain and Andy are planning on going to Ivaga, and Weyland-Yutani will be receiving the message about the goo and most likely to follow them, do you think it's possible that something may happen and Ivaga will have the same outcome as the Prometheus planet with the goo?
Oh, that's a good question.
I feel like they'll be way late on their way to Ivaga. Like, if Wayland is aware of the goo being on that ship, like, yeah, what does Wayland do to like get them off track or like find them?
I feel like Rain and Andy earned their paradise.
Like they're out of the story.
I want them to drift off to heaven to Ivaga and just live a happy life. And if we get a follow-up to Romulus, I want it to just be whatever is left over in the fuselage of the Romulus station and the offspring and whatever was on that lab.
Or like if that thing crashes into the planet and they're released on the planet, like a team of Marines has to come into the planet to
Alien
retrieve
3 and
something.
2.
This
one combined 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The next one is 3 and 2.
They turn it into a prison colony because a plane crashed on it, and the baby's he's the warden. He's like, get back in your cell.
Con Air, Alien 3.
Look at my weird penis hole.
Yeah, look at it.
Mastox32 asking, would the queen from Aliens be alive in space, and every xenomorph that's been injected in space be a cocoon somewhere floating in there?
I mean, they must be, right. I do love, I mean, Aliens, the queen design is so good with those long legs and the big head. Always loved it.
Yeah.
Always wanted more of that. I would love, if they make a sequel to this, like, get a queen in there somehow.
Yeah.
Because that is such a badass thing. I think that I loved the beginning of this movie where they show that, you know, it picking up the cocoon in space. And the kind of like, they were the aliens, right? They're all wearing these weird outfits and the laser cuts into it.
Yeah.
And it gives you like alien abduction vibes of like, this thing got abducted by them and it was just floating in space.
that.
But that was the one that Ridley ejects. No, they picked it up from the Nostromo's crash site.
I think the idea was like that fuselage wasn't that far away, and then
like she hadn't gotten that far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like she was still in the blast range of it roughly, and then maybe like I guess this fossil, this
what was
chrysalis
the
isn't
cocoon?
palatable. And I
I think it makes it its own goo.
That was definitely that's what it does. It like once it's in space, it can create this hardened shell to protect itself, which is crazy. The implication, because that would mean the queen must be able to do that as well, unless
Giant cocoon.
Yeah.
Unless a lot of their drones like protect her.
Right.
I would
that
imagine
could be
they
it.
like an ant.
It's kind of like an ant or a bee.
yeah.
They don't have stingers, right?
The queens, I think, can't
has
protect
stingers.
themselves. They need the
Yeah.
drones.
So yeah.
And also that does tie into this new lore with the lady part wall. Like that feels like if they can create, you know, the thing to keep them alive in space, it would make sense they'd have some sort of transformative cocoon.
Or it's its own casket.
I don't even know what the YouTube you're allowed to say words. I'm just like, you know, it all feels dangerous.
knows?
Everything Giger designed, I'm like, what can YouTube allow me to say?
I think the analog of it is you have the chrysalis, which is kind of the middle stage, the pupal stage between the larval and the adult. But then once the adult is expiring, it kind of like its corpse builds an additional casket form of the chrysalis around itself so that it can regenerate and discover a new biome.
Water bears, they can do that. Microscopic organisms can exist in the vacuum of space.
2 questions before we get to some alien ranking. Kadosho and Kristen Unpronounceable asking about any potential crossover between Blade Runner and Aliens. I mean, we're getting a lot from these 2 franchises. I think at some point Ridley Scott connected them, you know, to be in the same universe.
Yeah.
And also Kadosho talking about the comics earlier. Oh, those comics are so messed up. Brandon, cannot wait to hear your thoughts about them. Any quick comic thoughts?
The comics are great. There was one with like a big war, but on a planet with like 2 different factions of xenomorphs, like a red faction and a black faction. One of the best ones though is like Batman versus Aliens.
So good.
He goes to like a Mayan temple or something, discovers an alien, and has to like defeat it. I believe it bonds with a crocodile at one point, and you get a crocodile alien hybrid. Just any of those are great. Any of those Alien Dark Horse comics are so good. And the Predator ones are pretty good too.
Yeah.
They had a whole Alien vs Predator line.
Interesting.
Very
All
cool.
right. So my take on crossing over Blade Runner and Alien, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, but it does feel like Blade Runner is a franchise that doesn't really make money. It's a franchise that people love, not something that like is very financially successful. I could see though a lot of animated crossover things. That's just me. But
I can see them putting Alien into Blade Runner to make it money.
Oh.
I don't need it, right? Because like, what is a detective?
I
don't need a
need
detective story around an alien.
Yeah. But like, if it's a movie where Blade Runner's like finding all these bodies in this noir, and there's like acid dripped like pockets, and it's like, oh, it's the xenomorph, and then he's got to like, and then you got the androids dreaming of electric sheep meets xenomorph like morality. Sure, but like, I feel like that tone would be a razor's edge of not being cheesy.
I mean, they bring Harrison Ford back just so he can go, Xenomorphs. Why'd it always have to be xenomorphs?
Boo. Boo.
Curmudgeonly Harrison Ford.
Boo.
Okay, one final question here from GSU Eagle before we hear your alien rankings. There's a lot of xenomorphs are, they're breeding with people, I guess, and they're, face hugging and all that stuff. But if you were to get a tiny kiss from a xenomorph, would you prefer a tiny kiss from a xenomorph or a tiny kiss from Kingpin?
Oh.
Kingpin of crime.
Yeah.
I think I trust the xenomorph more. If it's the little mouth that comes out.
Yeah, just a little.
And he goes,
Oh no, this.
A little kiss and it puckers its lips. It gives you a little smooch. That way he can sneak attack you. He can get you from across the room.
I'm gonna go Kingpin. I
don't trust him.
I've been lucky enough to interview Vincent D'Onofrio, and he's a terrifying man. But at least I know he's human.
he's gonna headbutt.
I feel like he might headbutt me, but I'll live that. I don't trust a xenomorph. They might have a little Russian nesting doll tinier mouth in there, and then they kiss me, and they got a little.
Little bonus mouth.
I like their metal. They're like metal chrome teeth.
Yeah.
They're so cute. Their little breath.
Witness.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Little sweetie
They're a
pie.
little adorable. Okay, should we rank our alien?
Yeah, let's rank them.
No questions.
Seven movies, right?
7. We're
Seven
not
movies.
including AVP or AVP. Or
I think our top 3 are all gonna be the same.
They're
I'm
probably gonna be
curious
the
if one
same
and two are
top
gonna-
3.
Yeah. Should we start at the bottom or start at the top?
Let's start at the bottom.
Okay.
What's your worst alien movie?
Resurrection's at the bottom for me.
Oh wow. I'm gonna go
Interesting.
Covenant for me just because expectations.
Yeah, I did not like Covenant either. That one irritated me a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I think
At least gave me, the flute scene's great. I mean, Michael Fassbender fingering himself will always be great.
it's just I think Resurrection is less than the sum of its parts, and it has some truly amazing sequences. And I meant to say Covenant is less than some of its
Yeah.
parts. Because Covenant, the opening scene where it's just David and Waylon talking in his mansion is freaking great. I think the crew of the Covenant in the beginning where they're singing the West Virginia song is really fun.
Wasn't that a year when like 5 movies had that song too? or
Yes,
something
it was
like
that
Yeah.
year.
It was a year of West Virginia.
It was everywhere.
Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High.
I think the way it ends is actually really fun too. Like the surprise xenomorph on the but
I think part of my flaw is that it was right after Prometheus, and I thought, much like you did with specifically the Space Jockey, I wanted Covenant to answer more things that even Prometheus set up.
Yeah.
So then it felt like the middle part of a trilogy, and that's not fair when you don't know if it's gonna land.
Yeah.
Like I hate when a movie feels like an episode, and I feel like Covenant. I don't think about Covenant a lot because it didn't give me new bedrock.
Okay. Fair enough.
For me,
Both the prequels to me, like Prometheus and Covenant. Again, I'm shrinking Covenant here, but like I didn't like that it was like scientists making really silly decisions. Like it's better when it's like truckers and prisoners making silly decisions.
yeah, I agree.
But it was always like scientists not wearing their helmets around alien things, and I was like, "This
You're
is
the
a
smart people.
This is a bad idea, guys." But yeah,
I think Resurrection, I love all the movies of the Alien franchise. I think it goes a little too far with the sci-fi themes, but not with any of the philosophical weight
Yeah.
that they had in the earlier films. Cloning Ripley into the Ripley 8. It's a very goofy film that just
goofy.
feels like it loses everything that I really loved about the Alien films.
the man alien hybrid is really goofy
Yeah.
with its long tongue and its weird
not great.
face.
It goes so far from the original source code
Yeah,
of
yeah.
what's great about Alien that it just doesn't feel like an Alien film anymore. It just feels like a general sci-fi film. So that's why it's lowest for me. But Covenant would be my number 6.
Yes. Resurrection would be my number 6. I only bump it up a little because I did like it at my young man stage.
I'm same as you, and
Where I was
just-
like super into aliens. I was like, my alien movie, it's okay.
Yeah, and
Ron
there's a
Perlman's
nostalgia
there.
I can't escape. Ron Perlman,
Yeah.
the basketball scene. There's certain
Basketball
moments
scene,
that I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, cool. The movie has that like, yeah, cool of sci-fi when it was spelled correctly. Like when the Sci-Fi Channel wasn't SYFY, like the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
I remember that fondly being on it, so that's got to be 6 just because of that.
And Lydia Dietz, she was the secret android in that one, right? She's the one that turns out to be a synth
Oh, I think
in
you're
that
right.
one.
I haven't thought of that movie in quite some time.
I know.
Even
It's
recently
been
with
a
all
minute.
this.
Yeah.
My next one would be Prometheus at 5.
Prometheus at 5 for
I'd
you?
probably put Alien 3 at 5.
Yeah.
Uh,
Alien 3 is at 5 for me as well.
Though I probably owned the most action figures from Alien 3.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of those action figures. Great alien designs. The dog alien was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
I think Alien 3, other than Prometheus, might be the most misunderstood of the franchise. I think people hate on it too much just because it was such a steep drop off from James Cameron's Aliens.
Yeah.
But I think David Fincher ended up creating something that is
There's fun stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
and very scary stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
So for me, the Alien 3 is 4 because of the I really like that the nihilism didn't feel apathetic, and that's really hard. And I think David Fincher is the master of non-apathetic nihilism. Like, that movie feels very concentrated on that choice. So I put it a little higher because that's a hard line to walk. I do think it's also, like, super misunderstood because that movie made a movie. I mean, that studio made a movie and Fincher made a movie, and we've seen a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And I feel like knowing that, I can't remove what I know, and I can't watch that movie without my Fincher love or without the information. So maybe it should be lower, but for me, I see what could be in it.
Yeah, I prefer, I mean, Prometheus is just like one of these litmus test films where I ask people like, so what'd you think about Prometheus? What'd you think about the Lost finale is another one I throw out there. Because like, at the time, the predominant opinion in like people care about pop culture is that these things were trash. And like, if people have not given enough time to look back at them and realize that they're a lot better than that, I just kind of know like, oh, you may have an opinion that I respect, but you're not someone I want to like watch movies and TV with if you think that Prometheus is outright trash. I just think Prometheus has a lot of flaws with it, but just has some of the most incredible scenes.
Yeah.
And the lore of it is actually really interesting. The idea of the engineers, the fact that Ridley Scott came up with like an interesting origin story of Earth and our religions and our cultures and our biology, I think is pretty impressive. It's just the execution of the movie keeps it from realizing its potential.
Yeah, I think it's tough when you're like, I want to kind of give all this backstory and explain all this stuff, but I still need to make this like a horror movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I still have to have all those weird elements in it.
Right.
That like it's tough to put those two together, right? Because I think a straight lore movie is great if you don't have to worry about action and horror and all that kind of stuff. But you know, we were talking about just before we started shooting in Prometheus, that sequence of her wanting to get the thing out of her body, the child or whatever out of her body in that medical bay. I remember that happening in the movie theater, like with a crowd full of people and being like, this is intense. Like it was just like everyone was freaking out.
I miss those moments, and then Romulus gave me that. I like Romulus is the first time I've had some of those feels in so long. Which I love it so much.
I would put Prometheus at 4 probably.
Yeah.
So Prometheus at 4, Alien 3 at 4. Are we all with Romulus at 3?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I
Okay.
would put it.
Yeah.
So
And then-
I mean, comfortably a special experience.
I
and
mean,
like,
it's
so
great.
good in the movies.
Yeah,
I really, again, like I think it just really fits in there real nice, and like it doesn't look like they made all the sets look like it, and just some really cool shots.
And the atmosphere,
like,
it feels like a movie from before now.
Yeah.
Like just I watching that movie in the theater, I was like, I haven't felt these feelings. Not that other movies aren't good, it's just the feeling of watching a movie from that time. It felt like someone uncovered a film reel. Like I was like, oh, they can do this.
Yeah.
They
Right.
just pressed play. Whoa!
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
feeling.
yeah. I mean, just like I like the really loud sound design of like, especially the computers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they get trapped in that coolant room, it just like surprises you, and you're like, oh, fudge.
I had never seen The Abyss until this year.
Oh.
And The Abyss is my now favorite James Cameron film, and I didn't.
Okay.
And
Wow.
over T2, which is
Which
crazy.
version did you see?
That's what's nuts is I saw the regular one.
Okay,
So I
okay.
still haven't seen the director's cut, and it was
Eh.
such a gift to watch.
He gets a little
A little heavy-handed,
Yeah,
but it was such a gift to watch something that felt like it was like a lost tape. Like to watch a movie from then that is so good that like not nearly enough people talk about. That was the feeling I got in Romulus, where like not enough people talk about The Abyss like T2 or Aliens. I think it's as incredible, so it was quite the experience to be like, they can show me a new classic, and this to me felt like an immediately new classic.
It is fun to discover a film by a director that you've seen pretty much
Yeah.
everything else they've made, and just to see, for whatever reason, I didn't make time for The Abyss. Because likewise, I saw The Abyss for the first time this year. I did not watch the new director version where the wave stops at the city.
Don't do that one.
Jessica saw it though, and she had some thoughts. But no, I appreciate it just because I like James Cameron's craftsmanship and the way the performances he gets from actors, the intensity he gets out of
He
actors.
almost killed Ed Harris on that.
They all almost died. Michael Biehn is like, I think I suffered permanent damage from the slow
I mean, the way they
rise
made that.
in the tank.
If you've never seen The Abyss, watch The Abyss. If you've never seen the documentary about the making of The Abyss,
Yes,
watch that. Insane.
Yeah.
Just James Cameron is a crazy man.
But I was thinking of that the whole movie. Where Romulus, I was like, they can do this today.
It totally worked. Yeah, I really liked it.
It reminded me of like you were comparing it to Creed, which I feel like that's a good comparison point. Not as successful Top Gun Maverick to Top Gun, but it's like another director understands the source material so well and can produce a parallel story that does different things and feels derivative in the right ways, but fresh in other ways. I just felt like this is somewhere between like what Top Gun Maverick did to Top Gun, and I'm trying to think of a lesser recent example of this. that's still set in the
What
same universe.
Starsky and Hutch did to
Johnny
Lil-
Knoxville is all Starsky.
What the Brady Bunch did, the Brady Bunch movie did to the
Yeah,
Brady
requels
Bunch.
are hard because they're usually their bangers
they're
are
really
awful.
tough.
I guess Solo.
I mean, I really think Blade Runner 2049 really.
God,
works.
that movie's great.
Yeah.
It really works for me.
Yeah.
All $7 it made were well deserved. I love that movie.
So what's your
Top
1,
two.
2? What's your 1, 2 for
I'm
the
curious to see if
Alien?
we're all in alignment on top 1 and 2 because I've gone back and forth.
I've gone back and forth up until this moment. I have to
Everybody
make a
say it
decision.
on the count of your number 2 on the
Number
count.
two.
Number 2.
Number 2 on the
Okay.
count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Alien. Okay. That's kind of hard to do because there's just one letter.
Yeah, what letter are we gonna say last?
You had to hiss it like a xenomorph.
I think Aliens is like almost a perfect screenplay by James Cameron, and I've read that screenplay multiple times, and it's so good of a read. It's just the film as it's one of the most successful sequels ever, in the fact that he could change the genre of the first film to make a completely different and entirely successful film. It's just it loses something, in my opinion, from the first Alien film, and I think the first Alien by Ridley Scott is a rare example of a perfect film.
Sure,
I
yeah.
wouldn't change a detail about that film. The fact that Aliens, there's just like some kind of tonal issues of like, I think some of the colonial Marines in the cast don't know what movie they're making, and that's okay. It's super fun.
Game over, man.
And I wouldn't
Game
fault
over,
him.
man.
I think some of the performances are just a little forgettable, and there's just something about the first Alien film where it's a smaller cast, and every part of it feels essential and necessary. From Ripley to Dallas to Kane to Ash to Parker to Lambert, like everyone has a role in that film, and it's just so effective and so game changing. And James Cameron just took something that is perfect and made something that is almost perfect. In my opinion.
Your reasons are why for me Alien slightly edges out is just because to me they're both near perfect. But the boldness of Aliens from Alien being so perfect and then going like we could do that is just always going to be impressive to me because that was in the age of like a sequel. And they did the craziest thing. They didn't make a horror movie out of a horror movie. They're like, what if we make an action movie and hire that guy? So to me, I think the boldness is just what slightly, not that Alien isn't bold, but it's taking something that is the most known thing and making a sequel years later and doing the exact opposite to the point where we still talk about to this day. It's crazy that Aliens and Alien are so good and they're such different genres. That doesn't work unless they're both that good. So I just give Aliens a nudge because it took the craziest choice and I think landed the plane that shouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I hate saying anything negative about
Yeah,
Aliens.
it's just hard to.
It's hard.
Both of them
Which
are
is
in my top 5.
What's your favorite children? Like, it's not fair.
exactly, yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, I like Aliens more than Alien, the same way I like Empire Strikes Back more than A New Hope. All the hard work is done in the first movie of establishing everything.
Yeah.
And the second movie just gets to really play around. And, like, that's Aliens to me. It's like, yeah, we'll still have the xenomorph and facehuggers, don't worry, but we're going to have, like, all these pulse rifles. We're going to have this little tank armored car thing. We're going to have a giant alien queen. We're going to have the yellow excavator suit. Like, it's just all too much fun.
It's like a 4-cheese pizza or a pepperoni. Like,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
my mood,
Yeah.
and they're different, and you need one without the other.
I realize you can't have aliens without
Right.
Alien, but like I like all the plus-ups.
Yeah.
It really
Fair enough.
works for me. Evan, you've never seen any Alien movies?
Yeah,
It's
my
too scary.
ranking is all of them. Hey, producer Evan jumping in here just because we wanted to make sure everybody got the experience of the final list. Ranking all the Alien movies, we have Erik from 7 to 1. At the bottom, Alien Resurrection, Alien Covenant, Alien 3, Prometheus, Alien Romulus, Aliens, and Alien. For Brandon, we have Alien Covenant on the bottom, Alien Resurrection, Alien 3, Prometheus, Alien Romulus, Alien, and Aliens. And for Coy, we have Covenant on the bottom, Alien Resurrection, Prometheus, Alien 3, Alien Romulus, Alien, and Aliens on top. That's it. Okay, how was that?
Nice.
One final question here from Ryan Painter. How do you guys feel like Romulus stacks up to Prey? So, like,
Okay.
Alien and Predator, right? Expanding their franchises now, bringing them back to the modern day. Feels like two very different films, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that they're both successful entries in the canon?
Successful for sure.
Definitely both successful. I think Romulus had the tougher task. I think Prey, there was a lower bar. Nothing against the Predator franchise, but it's just like Alien, the people who care about the Alien franchise really have a lot of strong opinions, and it's hard to make a successful Alien film. I think the Predator franchise is a somewhat simpler formula, and as long as you just hit those beats, you can make a successful movie. And that's what Prey was. Like, it did it well. It took some risks, but I think the accomplishment of Prey was an easier accomplishment than the accomplishment of Romulus.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think they both did a great job of understanding what worked about the original movies in those franchises and kind of like finding a new way to tell that story.
They did a similar thing, playing the hits plus new stuff. And I think that one is just a bigger new stuff with the setting, but even that movie has some... It's funny because that movie is incredible. One of my favorite movies of last year or 2 years ago, whatever year it came out, it made my top, but that movie also has cheeky, like, self-aware references that are, like, anachronisms. Like, but since it was a smaller release, not as many people are like, oh, it quoted the... But, like, I think they're very similar in, we know what works, these things haven't worked. They both had 2 films that came out right before it not do as well. Let's go back, you know, to formula. And I think that they both should be revered as back on track.
Yeah.
Do we feel like Disney has redeemed themselves from 2023 in that in 2023 they took some franchises and did stuff like, you know, now that they own the Indiana Jones franchise, they made Dial of Destiny, and that there were some mixed feelings on that. This year, they've taken over the Fox franchise with Deadpool and Wolverine, which is considered successful. They took over this is their first Disney Alien film. And
also Apes, right?
And then Planet of the Apes is another one. So despite the controversy that Disney will always invite by being Disney, do we think that they've proven adept by allowing these installments to be made?
It does feel like they didn't water down anything, right?
I like their R-rated stuff more than their PG-13 stuff.
Yeah.
More like consistently wise. Look at those films. Like, I mean, obviously Apes is PG-13, but the consistency of their 20th Century Studios might be stronger than their Disney umbrella.
Yeah, it does feel like I like that when the movie starts. You know, it still says 20th Century. Like they didn't throw like a Disney in there.
It would have felt so weird.
It would have felt really weird.
In my heart, I know the Alien Queen is a Disney Queen. I love that. But I like seeing the...
I didn't even think about that.
Dude, Tyler Durden's a Disney prince, son. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think they've done a good job. I'm willing to let them keep making R-rated Alien movies. Like, as long as they don't start messing with that. As long as we don't have, like, Alien Camp on Disney Plus anytime soon, where it's like the kids running around with xenomorphs.
Space Marines. Yeah, they're kids.
Young Facehugger Adventures.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Teacher David, they tried to let the facehuggers into the room. We were so scared. Oh, don't worry, children. I'll make sure you all meet the facehuggers.
I want David music
Teacher
camp. David music camp. Is everyone learning the flute?
Yeah.
I'd watch.
Okay, that's it for us today, folks. We gotta get out of here. Someone's really disagreeing with me from lunch. Make sure to subscribe to the Breakroom channel here on YouTube and give us a follow on Twitch, where we do these videos live. Coy, where can the folks find you on the internet?
I can have me down. I'm trying to grow my personal YouTube. I got it up to like 35K. I'm growing that beast. I'm really proud of it. So I've been doing lots of comic stuff. I read 60 to 70 comics a week, so you don't have to. And I give you my favorite 9. I also try to make them more approachable, so I give you all the news of the week in comic books, but also the comics themselves, which mean a lot to me, and run through all the new releases that week from your major publishers, your Image, your Dark Horse, your Marvel, your DC, and I do movie reviews, and I just put mine up for Kneecap, which is one of my favorite movies of the year. Kneecap blew me away. I knew I'd like it because it's about Gaelic hip-hop, like Irish language hip-hop, but it's like one of the best biopics I've ever seen, and the actors are the hip-hop like the rappers play themselves in a movie about themselves, and Michael Fassbender's in it.
Oh, okay.
Who speaks Irish? Michael Fassbender speaks Irish to Irish hip hoppers in this movie.
Okay. Is it called Irish? The language called Irish?
The Irish language is called Irish.
They have a language.
So Gaelic culture, Irish language.
I see.
But Irish language was only ratified as the national language of Ireland in 2022, in part thanks to this hip hop group.
Wow, I gotta check this out.
Kneecap is so good.
That sounds awesome.
Kneecap.
Because Belfast is known for only a few things, and kneecapping people's tunnel.
Oh, okay, interesting. I went to Belfast. I didn't get kneecapped.
He's still standing.
Still standing. Still standing. Here I am. That's a lot of work, Coy.
I'm I'm real tired, man. I put up 6 videos in the last 5 days, and then I'm 3
impressed.
I'm tired.
I'm just grinding a little on Fortnite here and there. That's all I'm doing.
And reading those 70 books. I'm tired.
You read too much. I'm worried about you.
It's fair. I know a lot of words.
Hey, make sure you follow at Breakroom and R on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and Twitch. We'll catch you next time. Late as Goodbye.